Hi, my name's Andrew, and I'll present to you Napoleon I. Napoleon was born on the 15th of August in 1769 in the city of Ajaccio in Corsica, into a very minor nobility. Corsica at the time had just been taken over by the French after being controlled by Genoa, so Napoleon did not see himself as French during his early life, but rather as Corsican. Napoleon's parents sent him to go to the military school in Brienne in France when he was only 10 years old. At 15, he switched to the military school in Paris. During his schooling years, he studied history, military tactics, math, and other subjects, although his classmates often made fun of him for his Corsican accent. When Napoleon graduated from the military academy in 1785, at the age of 16, he was made an officer, second lieutenant in an artillery regiment. During this time, he continued his studies, particularly on the military tactics and strategies of the time. At first, Napoleon had difficulty rising in power. Positions at the time were handed out based on nobility, not skill, which left Napoleon barred off from rising the ranks. However, when the French Revolution broke out in 1789, this changed that situation. He was quick to support the revolution if that meant he could rise in power. His military support for the revolution quickly allowed him to rise the ranks in the French Revolutionary Army. After the siege of Toulon in 1793, Napoleon was promoted to the rank of brigadier general for his actions at the age of 24. As his skills were recognized, he was given his very own Army of the Interior. Around this time, Napoleon also married Josephine. Napoleon became widely popular in France, and in 1799 he helped overthrow the unpopular French Directory government and established himself as first consul, which was essentially a dictator, consolidating a massive amount of power for himself. He set about making many reforms in French government and law, which included establishing a centralized government, central bank, better infrastructure, and new higher education system. His most famous reform was the Napoleonic Code, which he established in March of 1804. It essentially replaced all the scattered and unorganized French laws and is still a basis for law in Europe today. On December 2nd, 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French. From humble origins as a minor nobility in Corsica, he became an emperor, showing his immense level of ambition. Napoleon is most famous for his amazing military career. Over the course of him being in power, he battled a total of 7 coalitions, beating all but the very last. A coalition is basically alliances by other European powers at the time, such as Britain, Prussia, or Russia, that were intent on taking Napoleon down and restoring the old monarchy. He was essentially at war with the entirety of Europe for much of his career. Napoleon innovated new tactics and strategies that made his army one of, if not the most effective at the time. He is famous for implementing a corps system within the French Grand Army, which was basically splitting up the army into smaller armies. This allowed them to travel much quicker compared to traditional armies. It was influential for many of Napoleon's victories, which relied on speed. However, it was not all victory for Napoleon. His greatest defeat was by far his invasion of Russia, where he and his army got caught in the winter and cut off from supplies deep in enemy territory. Of the over 600,000 soldiers Napoleon brought into Russia, only around 70,000 made it back. After this, Napoleon was forced to exile to the island of Elba, off the coast of Italy, and the old monarchy was restored to France. When word reached Napoleon that the monarchy was very unpopular at the time, he felt it was time to escape the island after only 10 months staying there. He returned to France and was mostly welcomed back. However, his stay wouldn't last very long, only around 100 days. A seventh coalition comprising of 16 nations, including the UK and Prussia, declared Napoleon an outlaw and the illegitimate ruler of France. Napoleon was finally defeated once and for all by British and Prussian forces at the famous Battle of Waterloo on the 18th of June, 1815. Following his defeat in Waterloo, Napoleon abdicated the throne and tried to flee to the United States, but the British stopped him and decided to exile him far away to the island of St. Helena on October 15th, 1815. It was extremely isolated and remote, and here Napoleon spent the rest of his days. He lost the battle for France, but here he tried to win the battle for his own legacy by writing memoirs and stories that portrayed him in a positive light. In 1815, he showed signs of illness and later died April of 1821 at the age of 51. Today, Napoleon is remembered as one of the greatest military leaders ever and as a reformer of the French government, changing European history. Many of his reforms are still in effect in some way today, over 200 years later, showing his impact. Many books, films, and movies have been made about him too, the most recent and famous being Ridley Scott's film Napoleon, which unfortunately sucked honestly and had a lot of historical inaccuracies. Napoleon's final resting place is at the Les Invalides in Paris, where visitors can see his tomb.